Good morning. It is May 16th, the Budget and Public Employees Committee. It is 10:23. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Sanye.
Present.
Vice Chair Browning. Alderwoman Velasquez.
Present.
Alderman Devotie. Chair Aldrich.
Present.
Vice Chair Browning. Alderman Devotie. 3 present.
Thank you. With that, we have no minute meetings. Before we go into item number 5, which is Board Bill number 1, which is a budget FY27 budget bill. The next item will be committee discussions. Before we go into the committee discussion, I want us to just kind of center ourselves in the space that we're in. 1 year ago today, a tornado ripped through part of our city, majority North St. Louis, not too far from here, from the fairground area to Fountain Park, pretty much a large chunk of north side. It did hit a little bit of Central West End. Not only that day did a lot of people lose their homes, but we also lost 4 people that lost their life. So if we could just take a moment of silence on this 1 year to remember those that we lost, people that are still struggling, and hope for the better future, especially for North St. Louis. Thank you. Before we go into it, I do want to thank Herbert Hoover Boys and Girls Club, who is hosting us today. And I do want to give a thank you to Reggie Jones, who is the chair director of Herbert Hoover Boys and Girls Club. He's also the mayor of Dalewood. There's some flyers out front to get young people involved. Herbert Hoover Boys and Girls Club have a baseball registration that they have happening right now, as well as a youth football and cheerleader sign up. So we got to support our Boys and Girls Clubs, spaces that allow young people to actually have something to do when there's less and less spaces for those. So thank you to Herbert Hoover Boys and Girls Clubs for that. And just to be respectful of everybody's time, we're going to jump right on in. Thank you, STO TV, for the setup today. Thank you to our clerks and staff for making it happen. And thank you all for all being here today and being part of the process. We will have another public hearing next Wednesday at the International Institute at 6 p.m. So it's another opportunity so the public can weigh in before any changes are made on the budget. We do apologize that the Zoom is not working, so if you can push people to the YouTube, it is being streamed live on YouTube. Typically, we have the Zoom and YouTube going, but when we take it out in the community, sometimes there's a little difficulty, but thank you guys for being patient. With that, we'll jump right into the budget. We have Budget Director Paul Payne, who will be walking through the budget. If you need a packet, we do have some extra ones. You can follow through either in the packet or up at the screen. Director Payne, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Budget Committee, and good morning all. So what I'd like to do is go through a budget presentation I made to the committee when they began their deliberations on the Board Bill number 1, which is the budget for the fiscal year coming up and starting July 1, 2027. All of this material, by the way, is also posted on the city's website. So you can, if you're interested in the materials, any of the budget books or this presentation, you can find it on the city's website. All right, the proposed FY27 annual operating plan is $1.41 billion, representing a modest 0.5% increase. And you can see in the table below, the budget is comprised of a number of funds. The general fund, which being the largest of the group, is our main operating fund, which funds most city services. It is estimated at $637.1 million, which is a 4.9% increase. Most of that, if you recall, last year we had issues with the refunds on the earnings and payroll tax receipts, refunds. And so we're basically recovering from that this current fiscal year. And so that's where much of that increase is. Other than that, the receipts are beginning to level off. One of the big questions was what was going to be the recurring receipts going forward with refunds. We've seen some increases prior to exceeding the level that it was prior to the pandemic, but it is leveling off, and so the underlying growth is still there. Other than that, we see growth of about estimated at 1.7%. In the special revenue categories, the use tax is up $5.9 million. That's $257.6 million for the entire special revenue categories. And those special revenues include special revenues such as the use tax, some of the public safety sales taxes, some of the parks taxes, et cetera. The use tax is up $5.9 million. Miscellaneous funds are up $3.7 million. And then the gaming fund, which was down last year, has actually recovered a little bit, and it's up about $1 million. In the grant fund categories, it's down to $71.9 million. It's 18.3% decline. That's a bit of a misnomer only because the grant funds include some ARPA revenues that we had in the last fiscal year, interest revenues that we are no longer appropriating. We had $20 million in one-time receipts last year. We are reappropriating of about $6 million this year, so it's a decline in FY27. And the debt service fund is utilized for paying off our general obligation bond debt. That's our property tax funded debt, and it's pretty well flat at $13.1 million. Our debt service, our capital improvements funds at $50.4 million, that's down 18%. Most of our capital improvement funds are funded through sales taxes, the half-cent sales tax, as well as some of the parks sales taxes. But the biggest variable from year to year is we also allocate 1/2 of the prior year surplus, operating surplus of the general fund. And in the last fiscal year, it was actually less than the prior year. So that's accounts for most of that drop there. And sometimes you don't have an actually operating surplus from the prior year fiscal year. So our underlying revenue is somewhere in around $41, $42 million. In the enterprise funds are accounting for those departments that operate like a separate business, such as the water division and airport. They total $335.2 million. It's down just under 1%. The water division budget is down $5 million, and the airport is up $2.2 million. And then finally, on the internal service funds at $49.9 million, that's a 5.7% decrease. The internal service funds are funds for which departments charge each other for services, such as the mail service, or there's a fund for charging for fuel that the Equipment Services Division provides fuel for departments, and so that's the charge. But it's an internal service fund. So you can see that the total budget proposed for next year is $1.4 billion. That's a 0.5% increase. And in the pie chart below, you see that the largest share of that is general fund at 45%. Now, before going into the details of FY27, I wanted to look at the current, how we stand in the current FY26 on some of our major revenue sources. And as I mentioned, this page shows earnings and payroll taxes. The earnings tax was up 46.6%, but that result is skewed simply because of those refunds that I mentioned earlier that we had to issue last year. We had totaling $47.2 million at this point in the last fiscal year. So what is important here is what you're looking at is underlying growth, and we did have some underlying growth, and it was up 3.7%. And the same phenomena occurred in the payroll tax, which is up 14.2%, not as dramatically as the earnings tax, but it was also skewed by the refunds. And its underlying growth in the current fiscal year was 1.7%. Sales tax is also a big source of funds, not only in the general fund, but as I mentioned, some of the special funds. Fiscal year to date, through the third quarter, it was up 3.6%. If you remember last year, it actually had declined. And so this was somewhat of a recovery from the prior fiscal year. And the local use tax, which had been, if you can see historically, had some strong growth in the last couple of years, actually declined last fiscal year. And so it was, but year to date this year is up 2.8%. And finally, some of the other revenues we'll look at, a restaurant gross receipts tax and the hotel gross receipts tax, sort of as a measure of our other tourism-based taxes. The restaurant gross receipts tax were up 7.6%, and our hotel gross receipts tax were actually down 5.8%. So when you hear about conventions and things coming to the city, it does have a fiscal impact on our revenues. So this next slide just basically shows some of the major sources of funds. You can take the general fund. The third quarter, there's the original estimate 607.4. Third quarter revised is $626.2 million. That's about $18.7 million over estimate. And then the FY27 estimate is $607.4 million. Last year when we were looking at this chart, you see we saw a lot of red ink because the sales taxes were down. But you can just see most of them are just slightly over estimates there. Total on those funds alone would be $26.6 million. And before I go into other details on the budget, I'd like to point out some of the highlights overall, regardless of funds. And that's what this slide is showing. In terms of employee pay and benefits, as you may have heard, we have about $18 million allocated for pay adjustments. This includes some implementation of entry-level salaries brought to competitive salaries with market. This was a pay study that, conducted by the Department of Personnel to try to help the city fill its many vacant positions. We also have, for those not affected by that, a 3% salary adjustment for most other employees. And then, as you heard, a 7% pay increase for uniformed police and firefighters. There's also, as you know, health increases in health insurance costs of about 5.3%, and that also includes $1.6 million for the police retiree health benefit. And then we did have some good market returns in the last year, which benefited the pension systems, and they collectively are down $6.5 million. In the emergency housing, neighborhood stabilization efforts, you're going to see some special initiatives, $2 million for the forestry division, weed and debris unit to clean up some of those areas where normal just mowing and things doesn't get to it, where you have large trees and debris that's been piled up over the years. This is a specific effort using one-time funds to address those kind of situations. $2 million to the Department of Human Services to continue the Code Blue emergency housing program. That's out of the local use tax, and that's specific for getting through the winter seasons and providing emergency housing there. A $4 million increase for derelict building demolition. That's totaling $9.3 million overall, utilizing local use tax and Prop P use tax funds. A $1 million increase for the Right to Counsel housing initiative, and another $1 million increase for continuing support of the tiny homes program. In the area of public safety, there's an $8.6 million increase to the police department, which is a 4.3% increase overall, which includes those pay increases I discussed earlier. A $5 million reappropriation of the ARPA interest to fund completion of our PSAP with capital and GOB funds, the GOB being general obligation bond funds. A $2 million increase to corrections. Most of their costs or increases you're going to see are in overtime and inmate medical contract expenses. And a $300,000 increase to SEMA for some additional staff and contract for emergency planning. In some of the other categories, we have a $5 million increase to meet the rising costs of police-related judgments. That would be in the city councilor's office. We have a $1.3 million increase to the street department. $600,000 of that is to replenish our salt and supply, bringing that budget to $1 million. And then we also have an amount for contract snow removal. $500,000 for the traffic division, begin a street signage and striping inventory, and $200,000 increase in refuse as they've seen increased costs with picking up and disposing of abandoned tires throughout the city. There's also a $2.6 million increase in costs of equipment services and facilities management. Those are divisions that manage the city buildings throughout the city, as well as maintaining our city's fleet vehicles. A $1 million increase in the Board of Elections. Every other year, as you know, from a fiscal standpoint, we have, this is an election year, so we have 4 elections scheduled coming up, so we have to set aside funds for that. And then a $500,000 general fund subsidy to the communications division. That division is supported by gross receipts tax on the cable companies, and that tax has been declining, so that's to make up for that difference. In terms of workforce totals, it's a net reduction of 22 positions in the general fund and a net reduction of 82 across all funds. And I'll try to go through this quickly. I don't want to take up all your time here. General fund, this is just what we're looking at is basically how it's constructed. So you begin with what the budget was and the estimate was for the current fiscal year. You make adjustments, and then you allocate for increases and decreases. So we had a $607.4 million budget this year. As I mentioned, through the third quarter, we're tracking a bit higher than that, about 18.7. And then we also assume net growth. And as I mentioned, that's 1.7%. So that gives you a $637.1 million budget base for FY27. So if you start with the 607.4 this year, we identify the increases and decreases. And in the area of general government, the largest one as I mentioned, was in the city councilor's office. We've increased the judgment line by $8 million, mostly due to police judgments there and to be allocated for those payments. In general, the general government's up $10.1 million as a result. In the finance department, that's not much of a change, about $300,000, mostly reflecting the pay increases I mentioned. Citywide accounts, in the current fiscal year, we had budgeted $10 million rather than for saying pay increases, rather than distributing across departments, we budgeted in this place. Citywide accounts is an account category where it's, things are not specific to any one department. So we have a sort of a collective catch-all for those items. And that's where we included that salary adjustment line. So that's not repeated because the salary adjustments have already been distributed to departments. So that was why that decline is there. Elsewhere, the subsidy to communications division was the largest item there. You see the increase of $500,000. And we did have some capital debt to the capital fund from the Carnahan Courthouse drop off. So the net decline there is $9.7 million. And then in Parks, Recreation, and Forestry, we've got increases scattered across, mostly for some additional positions, particularly in forestry. That's the biggest notable item there, adding 5 positions for the weed and debris program. And they've got some offsetting decreases in per performance and contract services. In the county offices, the biggest item there, again, as I mentioned, the Board of Elections, that's that $1 million. And judicial offices, the courts included a 4.5% increase for their pay for both juvenile court and circuit court. And that's $2.9 million in total. But the overall increase in judicial offices is $4.2 million. Streets, as I mentioned, the biggest item there, there's some movement between the street director's office and towing with movement of positions, but that's not a change actually, that's just moving from one division to another. Some of the big, but you'll see the traffic division inventory of signage there, $500,000, and some refuse division increases as well. The police department, as I mentioned, we've got the salary increases 7%, and some civilian increases there as well. The internal services account, that was an account added in the current fiscal year to represent costs provided or support services provided to the department by other city departments. When the department actually went back under state control, we wanted to make sure we were accounting for all costs associated with the police department, so we put that line there. During the fiscal year, and then there were 4 departments. It was personnel, legal, equipment services, and facilities management. And during the fiscal year, the police department absorbed both the Department of Personnel's function as well as the legal function. And so as a result of that, the internal service account went down by $6.2 million. Police pension, as I mentioned, one of the pension systems was actually also down $3.1 million. In the fire department, the biggest increases there are related to the pay increase because we have a pay parity provision. They get the same increases as police officers at 7%. So that's a big hit there on both pay and overtime in that department. And fire pension was down $1.9 million. Other public safety, the biggest item there, Justice Center. One of the efforts we're doing, and that some of the reductions you'll see in positions are reductions in vacant positions. We're trying to get the what we call a table organization or our personnel schedules closer to what's actually occurring. There are a lot of vacant positions, but what this does is reduces 25 vacant positions at Justice Center, but it also increases overtime and it provides funds for the meals and medical contracts. Human Services up $300,000. There was an item there for decommissioning tiny homes, but as I mentioned, one of the amendments we made back when E&A had adopted the budget or proposed the budget was to include a $1 million continuation for the tiny homes program. Board of Public Service, the President's office is pretty much flat at $200,000 for the increase of the year, but the big increases there are facilities management and equipment services. So overall, you had a $29.7 million increase in budget there for the general fund, and bringing that to the $637.1 million total, so, in a balanced budget for the general fund. General fund revenue outlook, as I mentioned, the earnings tax still is the largest source of funds to the general fund, $255.1 million estimated for the next year, a 2% increase. In the property tax, $82.7 million. One thing about the property tax, and I don't know if everyone realizes that, but the city receives about 20% of it. So it's not the largest share. It's not of our revenue here. Most of the, or about 2/3 of the property tax actually goes to the schools. But it contributes about, as the chart will show, it contributes about 13% of the general fund revenue. So property tax, $82.7 million. We're only estimating up about 0.3%. It is one of the areas where it's going to be impacted by the tornado because of land valuations and property valuations, impacted by that. Sales taxes, $63.8 million. Estimating sales tax, as I mentioned, is a large source of revenue to the city, not only in the general fund, but also in special funds. It is not a strong grower historically. We've got an estimate here of, as I mentioned, last year it actually was down. Fortunately, this year was up a bit, and so we're estimating 1% growth next year at $63.8 million. One item, I know it's small, but I put it in here separately simply because of the interest, is the marijuana sales tax. It has sort of underperformed since being instituted. It estimated, it became in actual receipts $1.7 million. In the current fiscal year, it's tracking at 1.4, and we're estimating it to be flat at 1.4. It'll be interesting to see whether any developments there at the state level to restrict non-regulated sources will impact our receipts in that category. And the payroll tax, $47.7 million, estimated growth of 1%. Franchise utility taxes at $62.7 million, that's a 12.7% increase. Most of that increase relates to the water division. As you know, the water division has been struggling with some of its revenue. It pays the general fund some amounts of gross receipts. It was not able to do so this year entirely, and this projects that it will resume its normal payments next fiscal year. And the airport has also seen an increase in its payments to the general fund next year. Intergovernmental funds, those are payments from the state, various sources of funds, including gas taxes and such like that, at $21.6 million. License fees, $13.1 million. You don't really see much growth in license fees because most of the license fees are a fixed dollar amount, so it's pretty flat typically. Departmental fees and fines, 59.5%. I think the decline there is mostly with interest earnings from the going into the next fiscal year. And then other categories, 29.5%, or $29.5 million, includes things such as transfers in from the tourism taxes and such. So that's the total estimates of $637.1 million. And I won't repeat most of this because we've already gone through it, but this is just an illustration of the general fund expenditure outlook by those categories I discussed. And you can see where, for instance, the non-departmental decline of 22.3, that's that $10 million I talked about being in the citywide accounts that wasn't repeated. The county office 10.5% increase is the election board increase of $1 million, et cetera. But the overall budget is $637.1 million. That's a 4.9% increase. Public safety at 51.8%. And you can see the pie chart is the largest portion of the general fund. In some of the special fund categories, local use tax fund, this is the local use tax is a tax on out-of-state purchases. It used to be primarily paid by businesses that bought things out of state, but in recent years with the expansion of online sales and such, it is beginning to behave more like the sales tax. So in total estimates of revenue, as I mentioned, year to date it's up 2.8%. Revised estimate is $60.2 million. It funds by ordinance three particular, or actually four buckets. The Affordable Housing Commission usually it gets $5 million per year. Its total budget is $6.7 million, includes prior year receipts and non-use tax receipts, as well as contracts that may be reappropriated. The Healthcare Trust Fund also includes the behavioral health and contracts within the health department. Receives $5 million per year. It is also appropriated $1 million that it accumulated from the previous year for those purposes. And then, as I mentioned, building demolition gets $3 million per year, but it also had a balance, an excessive balance, which is being appropriated, the total $5.5 million in FY27. What's not in those three buckets is put into what is called the excess use tax fund. And there are a variety of uses for that. And you can see those listed below. The City Councilor's Office of Affirmative Litigation Unit, that Forestry Division initiative, that $2 million one, that's where that's at. The Refuse Division does bulky pickup there. Housing Conservation Program from the Building Division. The Office of Violence Prevention, funded at $8.8 million. That's where that is funded. There's pieces of both the police and fire retiree pension systems. And then that's the majority of our local funding for the health department at $13.7 million. And then human services at $4.7 million, which is an increase. That includes the $2 million for Code Blue and the $1 million for the right to counsel. That's where that is being funded through the use tax. And then next, the Economic Development Sales Tax Fund. Also sales tax, it's up 3.6%. Revised estimate for 27 is $23.5 million. And it also has allocations per ordinance. This is where the transit monies that we were talking about, transit expansion, 60% of those funds are allocated by ordinance to that purpose. And at the end of FY26, it's estimated that $101 million would be available in that fund. 10% is allocated to neighborhood stabilization, primarily administered by PDA, our Planning and Design Agency, as well as our CDA, as our Community Development Agency, and including some previous unspent funds. Those totals at $3.2 million. We also have 10% allocated to workforce development, and that's managed by Slate, as well as Director of Human Services. Slate primarily at $3.5 million, and Director of Human Services 1.5 for a total budget in FY27 at $5 million. And then 10% for public safety infrastructure. There are a couple of things, smaller items, 911 system, as well as the SEMA's mass notification system. But the remainder is being allocated to, again, as I mentioned, complete the project called PSAP, our Public Safety Answering Point, which is being constructed next to the headquarters of the fire department. And then finally, there's a 10% that's allocated to the capital fund each year, and that's appropriated within the capital fund budget. Another special fund known as Prop P, this was a half-cent sales tax that was allocated to public safety, and then as well as the associated use tax increase, because when you increase the sales tax, the use tax also goes up, and so that there's a portion of that. And all of these allocations are by ordinance. 66% of the sales tax piece of this goes to the police department, and its budget at $15.5 million for next fiscal year. 28% goes to the fire department, and it's including prior year balance is $6.7 million, and 6% goes to the circuit attorney's office. So that portion of the budget is 24.9, almost $25 million. And then the use tax estimate portion of that is $6.5 million, and 25, and again, these percentages are by ordinance. 25% are after school programs and summer jobs, and that's, as you can see, through the Director of Public Safety, the Police Cadet Program, and Slate, totaling $2.2 million. 7% goes to the circuit attorney, 25% goes to recreation programs, that's another $2 million. Again, 17.3% goes to building demo, which in this year we're appropriating, again, unspent monies totaling $3.8 million. And then 25% for social work and mental health at $2.4 million. So that's another $10.9 million for those purposes. The capital budget, as I mentioned, at $50.4 million. That's a decrease of $11 million in the previous fiscal year. And as I mentioned, the decline is mostly due to the results of the prior year surplus. And again, that's one of the sources that's more variable than other sources. And last year's surplus was smaller. We had $9.35 million, which was less than the 20+ million that we had in the prior fiscal year. It also includes $6.8 million in street and bridge projects from the gas tax receipts, and the capital half-cent is our largest. A half-cent capital tax is our largest source of revenue to the capital fund, and those are allocated by ordinance. In the box there, I can show you. It shows you how the your prior surplus has been allocated, and then the graph shows you where the distributions for each of those capital budget portions of the capital budget are allocated. The ward accounts are a total of $10.7 million. Next couple of slides just show you personnel totals. As I mentioned, in the general fund, 4,696 positions. It's down 22. Special funds down 59. All in for all funds, 6,415 positions. That's down 82 positions. Historically, and this gives you a 10-year history, we're down 349 positions in the general fund, up 185 positions special funds. Grants are down 120, enterprise up 50. So a net result is that over the last 10 years, we're down about 260 positions. Pension costs, I include this within the budget presentation each year because this is one of those things where it's where it has an impact not only in this year but going forward. Decisions made, it's like debt in that the costs and that we see over time impacts budgets in future years. As I mentioned, in the current fiscal year or the coming fiscal year, costs have declined $6.5 million due to improved market performance in the past year. But that still adds up to $101.4 million for pension costs. So while it's down, it's still a significant portion of the budget allocated towards pensions. In looking at the pension systems, one of the things you want to look at and see, one, how well-funded are they? Typically, if you're at below 80%, that's somewhat concerning. We're close to 80% at most. You're considered fairly well-funded if you're above 80%. And as you can look at the systems, we're pretty close. Some of them are over, some are just slightly under. But I think one of the challenges we have is not that they're necessarily underfunded, but it's just so much, it costs so much to maintain that level of funding. And as a percentage of pay, the pension costs remain high, and our total unfunded liabilities in the pension systems in total $534 million. Now, that does not include the police OPEB retiree health benefit, which is another liability that is at $379.2 million. One of the success stories I wanted to point out was our fund balance practice. Back in 2017, when the city was downgraded, its credit rating was downgraded. It was cited for not having sufficient reserves. And what reserves do it basically gives you the ability, or the city's ability, to withstand shocks to the system. I remember going back to 2008 and 2009 when we had the Great Recession, if anyone remembers that. That was a significant hit to our city revenues. We had deficits 2 years in a row, about $18 million, and it nearly depleted our reserves. And so one of the things that rating agencies always recommend is a healthy reserve in order to withstand those kind of shocks. And it was only until FY23, something called the GFOA, Government Finance Officers Association recommendation, is that you have at least 2 months of receipts or of revenues set aside for reserves. And we were never at that point until finally FY23. We are totally, and that was a minimum standard. We were at $154.1 million, or going into FY27, which is about 24.2%. So we are actually above the minimum standard for what GFOA recommends. And so that's a major accomplishment for the city. Now, last year, we appropriated the half of the surplus of the capital fund, but the other half actually went to tornado relief. So that's why you don't see an increase in the balance there, because it was appropriated. So this is a recap. As I mentioned, the budget in total is at $1.41 billion. It's essentially flat at less than 1% or 0.5% increase for the fiscal year. General fund budget, $637.1 million. That's 4.9% increase. And again, the biggest change there is that revenues have been stabilizing with the tax refunds, earnings and payroll leveling off, and we've got modest overall growth going forward. General and special fund budgets include funds for addressing employee pay and benefit increases, emergency housing, neighborhood stabilization initiatives, so funding needs for public safety and other city services. Capital budgets funded at $50.4 million. That's a decline of $11 million, reflecting the smaller prior year surplus. And we are continuing to allocate funds for the ARPA interest reappropriated to help fund and complete the PSAP program, or PSAP project, which will be combined with capital funds and planned general obligation bond funds to complete that funding of the project. And so that's the conclusion of the presentation, and I'll just stop there.
All right, thank you, Mr. Director. I think most of the committee members have kind of asked questions. I will mention that we did invite the police department to come and present their budget. This year they did decline to come and present their budget, so for the last, bless you, for the last 2 weeks, next week will be the last week, the budget committee goes through each department and go through those budgets. For the last 2 weeks, we've been going through every department, and the police department has not decided to come in front of our budget. And if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Director, the police make up the biggest part of the city budget as well as the biggest part of public safety, correct?
Yes, they're the largest city department.
Okay. We did have a sign-in sheet, so we're going to jump to comments. So if you are here and you want to speak on the budget, there is a sign-in sheet over by the clerk. I know some people came in a little late, so if you came in later and still want to have your voice heard, you could be able to sign in. Everybody will have 3 minutes. We're going to use actually that microphone where the director is, so you could just step up to that microphone and speak into it. You have 3 minutes. Just state your first and last name, and then move the projector just a little bit, Director, or the microphone up. All right. Just come on up, state your first and last name. Madam Clerk will call each person individually. Like I say, you have 3 minutes, and whenever you come on up, you can proceed.
We have Chris Wilcock from the 14th Ward. In opposition,
good morning. My name is Chris Wilcox, and we're given the 14th Ward. If there is one criteria for a public budget, it's that it should serve the people. The irony is not lost on me that we are having this conversation in the building named after Herbert Hoover, a president with a legacy so deeply soaked in failure because of his steadfast refusal to serve the needs of the people in the wake of the Great Depression. In 1932, Herbert Hoover ordered the military to violently suppress the protests of the Bonus Army, veterans who were calling for benefits promised to them amidst a period of economic misery that will only be rivaled by the current one on the horizon. Many of our neighbors have been living in that world for years. They are our neighbors living in condemned buildings and on the streets. One difference between then and now is we used to call tent cities and shanty towns Hoovervilles, under the assumption that the elected officials were responsible for the failure to serve the needs of the people. Somehow we don't call these same consequences Bidenvilles, Trumpvilles, or in St. Louis, Jonesvilles or Spencervilles. We take it for granted that their response will mirror Herbert Hoover sending the violent arm of the state against poor people for the crime of making visible the failures of their government and embarrassing the interests it truly serves: real estate investors, property values, and corporate profits. The current budget represents exactly those backwards priorities. Empowering the nation's deadliest police department, SLMPD, not even nominally bound by our laws to repress the people most failed by a government that should have been served by them, that should have served them. This is the present in the encampment sweeps and stunts like SWAT throwing flashbangs at children in Concord apartments for the crimes of their negligent landlords and for the benefit of investors. You could scarcely find a better example of SLMPD living up to its legacy as a slave patrol, backed once again by a slaver state government as it was in 1861. Now this budget is poised to give them nearly $250 million, which is 100 times the amount it allocates to human services. Lest we think that has anything to do with enforcement of the law, the budget sets aside $5 million, over twice what it allocates to human services, just for the consequences of expected widespread law breaking of SLMPD and the subsequent court settlements they will incur. Last year, SLMPD got $2 million just from property it stole from residents, all in service to corporate interests that steal more money through wage theft than all forms of theft in the United States combined. Our elected officials should reject the budget without substantial amendments, including reducing the police budget, including their pensions, to the minimum we are legally obligated according to the mayor's own lawsuit. We should divert this money permanently and fully fund tenant right to counsel, the Office of Violence Prevention, finally do right by North City, and permanently fund Code Blue, which unlike SLMPD actually saved lives this year. Our elected officials should understand that agreeing to the current budget makes them just as responsible for it as the Board of Police Commissioners. Know that our elected officials who do the right thing will have our support. The alternative is to risk repeating the legacy of Herbert Hoover, a failure who served corporate interests over the people. Thank you.
Next, we have not determined, undecided, Harrison Sand.
Hi, my name's Harrison Sand. I'm a resident of the 7th Ward and I'm employed in the 14th Ward. And just for some background, I am also the Secretary of the Civilian Oversight Board for the the St. Louis Police, though I am not speaking on their behalf today. I signed on as undecided, but that was more so I could hear the presentation before I said what my decision was. I'm really opposed. This budget does not serve our city. We should be looking at services, not police. This current budget has 1 police officer for every 100 people. And in 2019, the FBI did a survey of this and found that across the US, there should be 1 police officer for about every 500 people. And this budget also has 1 person for every 1,000 people that do, 1 person that does human services for every 1,000 people in the city. These are backwards. I work in dementia research. Would you want a pill that cures dementia before brain damage or cures it after brain damage? If we put money into human services, we're helping our city before there are problems. We're not waiting for there to be problems and then throwing people in jail and making things worse. We need to do services that actually help people before. And I want to say the Police Board of Commissioners, it sounds like they've done a lot to kind of push this budget. They don't represent us. There's 6 people, mostly white male business owners, no one that lives north of Del Mar, 1 individual that is black, yet they were actually, in Tashar's governance, they were fired. This does not represent us. You, the aldermen, represent us. And this is something where this is a problem and you need to put up a stink. Not just for the budget, for someone taking the power and the votes of the city away from them. We don't have power when the governor is just assigning people that are deciding where our tax dollars are going. You guys are the ones that we send to represent us. So please, make us think about this. Create problems in this area. Don't just follow the police board. Do something to help us because you represent us and this is not what we want. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have in opposition, Tamika Mitchell or Jamila Mitchell from the 12th Ward.
Hello. All right. Once again, all right. My name is Jamila Mitchell. I'm a mother, a tornado survivor, and displaced from the 12th Ward. I'm here today to speak in support of funding for the Right to Counsel program because I know firsthand it works. While trying to recover after the tornado, I faced an eviction after challenging my landlord over conditions and issues that were not properly addressed. And during a time when my family was already dealing with instability and disaster recovery, I suddenly had to defend myself against losing my housing too. And because I had access to representation through the Right to Counsel, I was able to defend myself and walk away without an eviction on my record and without losing everything else. No money was exchanged, no backroom deals, just access to legal representation that every tenant deserves. Programs like this matter because without them, many renters are left to fight landlords and complicated housing systems completely alone. And the truth is, most people do not have the resources, the legal knowledge, or support to defend themselves against landlords who count on tenants not knowing their rights. Right to Counsel helps level that playing field. It helps keep families housed. It helps prevent homelessness. It helps protect people from exploitation during moments when they are already vulnerable. And after the tornado, vulnerability increased for many families across this city. And this is why programs like this should not be underfunded. It should be protected, maintained, and expanded. Because stable housing should not depend on whether someone can afford an attorney while already struggling to survive. The city says it cares about recovery and stability, then the budget needs to reflect that. Invest in programs that are actually helping people. Investing not just in the programs, but in people that help the tenants and families and survivors stay stable is a better investment in this city than continuing to increase police budgets while communities are still struggling to recover. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have not determined or decided Kathleen Logan Smith.
Good morning. I'm Kathleen Logan Smith. I'm in the 7th Ward. I wanted to say a lot of things today, but I want to echo what my previous speakers have said. Because the thing I've heard y'all say over and over again in all these hearings and all these meetings is, we're losing population. It's hurting our budget. We don't have enough people, right? How many times? How many times have we heard that? Too many times. And then I've also heard you say, our jail's getting overcrowded. And I've also heard you say, we're going to cut all the programs that help people. And I'm like, wait a minute. If you want people, invest in people. That's really the bottom line. It's not rocket science. Like, if you want people, invest in people. I have a people that I gave birth to in this city. My people wants to get married and have more kids in this city, and they want to raise this kid in their city. But they don't want to raise a kid with police and surveillance breathing down their neck. They don't want to raise a kid with absolutely no services. They don't want to raise a kid in this city with everybody being thrown under the bus. Okay? So if you want more people in the city, invest in people. And if you want more police in the city, invest in police. And that's the bottom line. So, no money for police over what they absolutely have to have, and I really don't think we should have any money for police. What does it say about us as a people when our budget, and it's $5 million for police misbehavior defense, what does it say about us as a people when we invest more money for civil wrongs than civil rights? The police budget is for us. Taxation without representation. Taxation without representation. This is the 250th anniversary year of that conversation. Remember how that came out. It ain't fair. Okay, so you go through this budget, because I'm a big nerd and I do these things, okay? You go through this budget with a fine-tooth comb, and I do. And I'm looking, guys, that building division hearing on Thursday, May 7th was embarrassing. Everybody I've shown it to was either laughing hysterically or crying. okay? And those of my colleagues in the room who have seen it know why. $260,000 in that line item and in this budget for software in the lead remediation program. And I know enough about lead abatement to know that software does not take lead out of buildings and protect children. It does not. I also know that in the hearing, I think it was Michael Browning who asked, why didn't you spend the $1.5 million in this budget for projects in lead remediation? It's not as if we've solved that problem in St. Louis. Am I right? Do not let the building division that has failed have that money again. Cut it out. Give it to somebody who's working. Guess who's working? We have results for working. Let's put money where it's working. Office of Violence Prevention, Right to Counsel, right? Healing North St. Louis, rebuilding homes, putting grandmothers back in their houses where they raise their babies. Put them back. We do not rest until we put them back. You know what else is in this budget? If you go through it with a fine-tooth comb in the building division where money seems to disappear. Disappears, disappears. I'm going to say it real quick. There's $600,000 in this budget to rebuild a historical house that probably means a lot to people, and I'm a big fan of building civic infrastructure and historic houses and museums. But $600,000 this year is a cruise ship, and we have cancer treatment to pay for. So I'm saying you're not going to put $600,000 into the Lyle House in Crown-Dillette Park to rebuild a house where no one lives when we have houses where people live that need that money. It's not that we hate you, it's that we love you, but we can't take care of that need this year because we have suffering over here. And there's no one suffering in that house. It's empty. It's empty. Okay? So pay attention to people. Love on us all like we're family. We have brothers and sisters who are suffering, and we have to rebuild that before we can have conversations about cruise ships or sprinkles on the cupcakes, because our kitchen has been destroyed. Okay?
Thank you. Next, we have an opposition, Misha Hurst from downtown.
Good morning, members of the committee. I'm here today to strongly support the complete funding of Right to Counsel program for
Ms.
tenants.
Hurst, before you continue, could you introduce yourself to the public?
Yes, I'm Misha Hurst from the 14th Ward, and I am here today to strongly support the complete funding of the Right to Counsel program for tenants facing eviction. I am a witness to the success of the Right to Counsel program. My family and I were summoned to trial for an unrightful eviction back in 25, in which the case was settled on our behalf due to illegal fines, charges, and practices performed by our former leasing company. The success of my case, unfortunately, highlights the fact that in most eviction cases in St. Louis, landlords are the only party with legal representation in court. It's not right that tenants who are at a clear financial disadvantage are left to navigate a complicated court system undereducated and by themselves. And I'm here today because I know firsthand that Right to Counsel helps to create a fair process that is simply impossible otherwise. When tenants have access to legal representation, we are more likely to avoid unjust evictions, like in my case, and attorneys are able to negotiate more reasonable agreements on the behalf of the tenant. Essentially, people are able to remain stably housed, which is and should be the bottom line for our community. The thing is, studies from cities across the country have shown that Right to Counsel programs reduce displacement and homelessness, which is a rapidly growing crisis in our city, and it doesn't have to be. And to know there are attorneys who are called to do this work, why deprive anyone of this precious right? It makes perfect sense. If tenants are kept in their homes, public money is saved. I urge you to fully fund and support Right to Counsel and to even consider the back pay owed to help cover many of the displaced tornado survivors that are now added to the massive number of tenants facing eviction in our city. I believe if you can stand true to the ordinance that was already set in place and designate just a few million of the many that pour into our city every year to our people when they are in most in need, great will be the reward of our city and our elected officials for simply maintaining the integrity and the titles of the commitments that you carry. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have, and not determined, undecided, Clyde James Verdi.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Don't let these folks take your seat. Y'all excuse me, I'm old and shaky today. Whew. There was a time when I could brag and say that I could be heard through a brick wall. But I've spent most of my life here. I was born here, and life here at 63 is too hard now. You're my former alderperson. I don't live in your ward anymore. My name is Clyde James Verdi, and I live in the 5th ward. At least it was the 5th ward when I left home this morning. I might, too many head injuries, babies, too many head injuries. I've come here today, Mr. Aldris, Ms. Sonier, and Ms. Danielle, I mean no disrespect, but I can't, I'm learning Spanish, but I can't do that.
Velasquez.
Bless you, Velasquez. She usually tries not to pay me too much attention. There will probably be some people in this room who are older than me who might speak, but on behalf of seniors who have been advocates since they were 19 years of age, that's me, I'm come to ask you as an elder to hear what the babies are saying, because all of y'all is babies in comparison to me. But also remember, to know that that piece of stuff across the street, I did the work to make sure that the EPA checked out your ward. I did that work. She did that work. I'm old now. I'm too old for this. I've come to ask you to please make sure after you pass this budget that the people who are responsible for making sure that the people who get the money, especially in human services, social services, see, because people not watching the money. These folks is watching the money. Folk over here watching the money, but the folks that you are paying salaries to are funding social services that are not happening. It's one thing to pay an entity that ain't working like it's supposed to, but ain't doing a thing. I'm trying not to cuss because I'm being recorded, and I can't go to jail, I'm too old. I can remember when my adult child, who is now 40 years of age, told me that she played on that lot when the building was still there. While I was in this building protesting that the rest of the community needed to be checked out, their babies are going to suffer the consequences because not every social service program that we fund is doing their job. So I'm not saying it's your job to make sure that they do that. I'm saying it's your job to make sure that the people who are employed, who allocate funds, somebody need to be going to Buki and them's business and making sure Buki is not laid up at the dope man's house. Because sometimes that's what's happening. Example, there is a senior housing empowerment program, starts with an H, that's all I'm gonna say. And when you call them, they apologize because supposedly because of the tornado. They real busy, and so they might not be able to get back to you. It's been almost a damn year since I called them. I managed to move my own self. And I had to give up certain supports to move my own self. Please know where the money's going and make people do what they say they're doing.
Thank you. Next we have Alvonia Creighton. downtown. In opposition.
Good morning, committee members. I am Alvonia Creighton, and I live downtown, I guess.
Can you walk up closer to the mic?
Oh. And thank you. Wait, let me get this. I am in opposition because I would like you guys to increase the funding to Right to Counsel, which I'm asking for additional funds of $1.5 million. Right now, our city is losing residents because of a massive power imbalance between landlords and tenants. While landlords have deep pockets and legal teams, everyday citizens are left to defend themselves and the system stacked against them. The crisis is worsened by there's a severe shortage of pro-tenant lawyers who specialize in landlord-tenant issues on the tenant side. That's what I'm getting at. Without adequate funding, the Right to Counsel, vulnerable citizens don't stand a chance. The May 16th tornado, it didn't destroy my home, but I was deeply impacted. Once the tornado hit, landlords choose to, when they have neglected, maintenance, it was easier for them to evict the tenants, by not renewing the lease. Okay? Once that occurs, and then they're weaponizing the eviction process. Shortly after my landlord chose not to renew my lease, instead of a standard transition, they filed an eviction complaint against me and actively slandered my reputation during the proceedings. For 4 grueling months, I had to fight this malicious filing. Ultimately, the landlord dropped the complaint entirely, but the damage is still on the eviction paperwork. It was an unlawful eviction. Even though the case was dropped, I'm now left carrying the heavy burden of a damaged rental reputation. I am forced to legally combat this, blot on my record just to find a new place to live. I should not have to navigate this exhausting, unfair process alone, and no other St. Louis resident should either. If you truly care about the city of St. Louis, and specifically about protecting our most vulnerable citizens from being displaced and exploited, you must take action. Please allocate an additional $1.5 million to the Right to Counsel Fund to ensure that the tenants have legal representation. They need to stay in their homes and fight back against wrongful evictions. Thank you for your time, your leadership, and your consideration.
Thank you. Next, we have Don Pate, Ward 6, in opposition, undetermined or undecided.
Hi, Dan Pate, Ward 6. Thanks, everyone. I had a bunch of stuff written down and numbers and different things like that, and after the presentation, it's just kind of weird. From 2020 to 2025, according to Ness Sandoval's most recent newsletter that came out, the city lost 7.7% of its population. That's 23,000 people. Yet the budget in the same period has gone up 30-something%. Now, inflation was crazy during COVID, but still, if we're losing population, why does our budget keep going up? We need to adjust this for the people that we have, not the people that we think we want in the future coming in. I mean, the people that are here are saddled with more and more obligations to keep the city funded, and it's not even going to the right place. So there's a couple things. It seems like, and someone can answer the questions for me, it seems like we put a lot of money into general revenue that shouldn't be going into general revenue or through general revenue, like the $12 million convention center tax. That goes into general revenue. even if it's used for other purposes, it seems like it should have its own line and not kind of inflate the general revenue number. In taking a look at the budget, it looks like since 2018, the budget has diverted the money for the lead remediation fund out of the lead remediation fund into general revenue or general building division revenue. So that's supposed to be used just for specific lead remediation. And I don't know if anybody has seen kids that are poisoned by lead. It steals their future. There's no cure. There's no coming back. They cannot recover. Our city can't recover unless we have healthy people that are here. And this is money that was set aside by a certain ordinance and a tax to take care of it. Also, the money that was taken out of a lot of different accounts that look like they're paying for stuff that they shouldn't be paying for. The lead remediation fund and the building demolition fund, a 50-cent tax and a 1-cent tax. $100 of building permit fees and occupancy permit fees get directed to fund those programs, not for general stuff in the building division, like the wireless Blue Yonder contract that we've paid $800,000 to. I mean, what portion is for City Serve, Healthy Homes, STL City permits, other systems? And it seems like the lead remediation and special demolition funds are paying for a portion of building division salaries, expenses, and normal costs, when it shouldn't be doing that. It should be going directly to what it was intended for, which is helping the people not be poisoned by older homes. So I just really would invite everyone, just any money that comes from the Rams shouldn't be going to downtown. They just got a bill passed that frees up $60 million in state tax credits for development. It also takes 50% of the upside, any increase in assessment, that has to be used down there for public safety. It also takes, and a bunch of the rules aren't even set up yet, but it's set up to take money out of the general city revenue, put it into downtown only. We shouldn't be also putting the Rams principal money in there when it's so needed on the north side and on the south side to fix people's old homes and stop poisoning kids. For God's sakes, please. Donald Trump has made a mockery of the court system by doing stuff just because he thinks he can. He says, go ahead and sue me. So why don't we do that? Let's take the money out of the police budget and put it towards other stuff and wait for them to sue us. Thanks.
Thank you. Next we have Karen Yang.
Hello, my name is Karen Jalian Yang. I'm a resident of Ward 7. I am here very disturbed because in the specifics, we see that there's a 0.3 million, not even a whole million increase to
Sorry, Ms.
SEMA.
Yang, could you let us know which ward you live in?
Ward 7, yes.
Thank you.
There was a 0.3 increase to SEMA for additional staff and emergency planning, and it's very disturbing to hear that on the anniversary of last year's tornado. We need to restore, not just destroy tornado-impacted homes, and I'm really struck by how Budget Director Payne said property taxes are impacted by the tornado, and that's 13% of the general fund. There will be a ripple effect for the whole region, and we need to invest in St. Louis being a place people want to live for generations, as the other resident just said. And so people in North St. Louis have already said they've lived there for generations. They have raised their kids there. They want to come back. They want to celebrate Memorial Day next year with barbecues in their yards, and we should let them do that so that we can all prosper. I'm disturbed by the public safety sales tax. This is just a microcosm of the bigger budget, but $15 million are going to police, but we have $2 million for recreation programs. We can't complain that our children are on the streets wreaking havoc when we don't give them anything to do. And we have only $2.4 million in social work and mental health services. I am someone who went to social work school. I have a master's of social work, and I know people who've done clinical social work. It is very difficult work, but they know how to de-escalate. They know how to connect people to resources without a gun and a badge. That's what we need. And we cannot give police $330 million next fiscal year. You know, when someone says you don't have McDonald's money, you're not getting McDonald's, right? So we cannot give into their demand for $68 million by June 30th. That is a bad precedent. Police have failed to present on their budget because they feel entitled, partly because the city has not given them reason to feel otherwise. Correct, yeah. Let's do it. Let's say this is what the residents want and need, and okay, come for us if you're gonna be salty about it. They are unaccountable and there are no consequences to their bad behavior. We cannot give $25 million extra dollars to police because they are the deadliest, most lawsuit-ridden, 70 lawsuits and counting, in the country. They are wanting $5 million increase to meet the rising costs of police-related judgments. What if we had less police to kill us and to injure us? We can't reward harmful and deadly behavior. We need to invest in people because for every dollar spent on police, less than, it used to be just 1 cent on health and human services. Now we've cut the penny, which isn't even a coin anymore, into pieces. Like, what? We're filing shavings from that poor coin? Anyway, so Code Blue has a $1.5 million gap. Office of Violence Prevention has a $4.1 million gap. Right to Counsel has a $1.5 million gap. These are all programs that work. We have people here who say they work. I volunteered for years for homeless winter outreach, both in the summer and in the winter. It matters when there's Code Blue because we don't have to go to people and say, oh, there's nowhere for you to go. We can say, there are buses that are gonna pick you up. I have a bunch of bales of blankets in my car. Yeah, they're scratchy as heck, but at least they'll keep you warm and help your fingers not freeze off with the thick gloves, right? So, yeah. Police have consistently over 100 vacant positions every year, and that accounts for $10 million per year in wasted funds that could go to programs and services that could address the root causes of harm and violence and improve the livelihoods of St. Louisans. And they have close to $10 million in overtime. I can't do that for my job. You know, if my job had vacant positions, we'd be cutting them. I work for Ford Through Ferguson. I'm not speaking for them, but we had layoffs, half the staff. What the heck is going on? Police are just more and more and more, and then, you know, empty chairs, empty seats. They're just doing admin work, I will tell you that. From our work on transforming 911, we found that officers spent over half their time on service and miscellaneous policing calls. That's 64% of time spent. That's on admin stuff. That's on, you know, making documentation in their vehicles. That's just checking on where an animal has gone, taking a report on a missing person. They're just transporting people back and forth. That's not what we need. Yeah, and I have a question. Why is our public safety access point not completed? If you go on Jefferson, you will see that it is just a shell. We have ARPA funding. I'm glad that Budget Director Payne addressed that we will be starting to spend more, but we were supposed to have finished that last year. I wanted to release a report and say, hey, this dispatch center, consolidated dispatch center is up and running and these are the outcomes. I cannot do that because I went to visit it and it was such a metaphor visually for what's happening in the city. It's just a concrete shell with open windows that don't even have glass and rustling plastic in the wind. There's construction equipment on the ground. There's like trash in the construction site. You can't even go in there. And then this is something we're proud of.
That is your time.
Thank you.
Next, we have an opposition, Mitchell Gegg, Ward 4.
Hello, my name is Mitchell Gegg. I am here to testify on I live in the 4th Ward. I am here to testify on the 2027 budget in solidarity with the people of St. Louis. It is appalling to me that the city is wanting to give the police a budget of over $200 million, including $500 million, or just $5 million, for expected misbehavior and violence from the police, and including a 7% raise, whereas the rest of the city's employees are only getting 3%. It is always worth repeating that St. Louis has the most murderous police department per capita in the country. And given that St. Louis also has the highest ratio of police officers per resident than any other city in the country, you'll forgive me if I don't take any complaints about office shortages all that seriously. They are also willingly coordinating with the human trafficking organization known as Immigration and Customs Enforcement, aka ICE. I would welcome the police to prove me wrong and protect the people of St. Louis from ICE, an organization that tear gasses children, guns down people in the streets, rounds people up in concentration camps, and cruelly deports them. You, the St. Louis aldermen, could do so much more good for the people of St. Louis by fully funding programs like Right to Counsel, Office of Violence Prevention, Code Blue, as well as EMS workers, public school teachers, and further tornado recovery. It's been well documented that our courts and judges have a classist bias against tenants, not only in the city, but nationwide. The Right to Counsel program helps to combat that bias and keep people in their homes. The Office of Violence Prevention has shown that they have the tools and willingness to actually reduce violent crime in the city. And Mayor Spencer herself has praised the efforts of Code Blue to protect St. Louisans from the harsh bite of winter. To talk about cost of living in this city, last year, while nationwide median rent slightly decreased, in St. Louis, median rent went up 4%, the third largest year-over-year increase for any city in the country, and wages have not been rising to meet it. St. Louis also suffers from rising gas costs, rising water costs, rising electric costs. And to go on a slight tangent, one thing that could further drive up the cost of living would be the data center currently taking over the Armory. I would encourage all of the aldermen before me and to take a look at what just happened in Festus when the city councilors there approved a data center and opposed this data center accordingly. I would like the Board of Aldermen to stand with the people of St. Louis and reject this bloated police budget and fully fund the Right to Counsel program, the Office of Violence Prevention, and Code Blue. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you. Next, we have Rachel Hurtado from the 7th Ward in opposition.
Good morning. My name is Rachel Hurtado. I'm a renter in Ward 7, and I'm testifying in strong opposition to the proposed budget. I want to start by talking a little bit about what SLMPD stands to leach from taxpayers' pockets beyond the 25% minimum currently required by state law. So they're trying to get the 25%, right? And it's debated what that 25% consists of. Outside of that 25%, SLMPD is also standing to receive retirement funds, which is not included in that 25%, they're arguing, including lifetime health insurance for every qualifying person who works in SLMPD, which is over 600 people now. Also, additionally, their capital plan to repair basements and buildings that are definitely a priority over the north side, right? They're also making a grab for the Rams money now, portions of federal grants, and are also claiming that the city owes SLMPD almost $68 million from last year and are trying to get that money re-upped. And also their pensions. And all of that on top of the 25% minimum stacks up to almost it's like $500 million when our city budget is $1.4 billion total in a city of under 300,000 people. 12 years after the murder of Mike Brown, as many folks have said, St. Louis still has the most murderous police department in this country. And we also have one of the highest number of lawsuits against our police department in the country, which our city defenders has been doing some research into. Other police departments are facing 10, 12 lawsuits. SLMPD currently has 70 active lawsuits against them. And the taxpayers bear the cost of settling those suits, right? On top of bearing the devastating costs of police violence on our streets, like the recent murder of Amishan Wilkins. SLMPD is attempting to cannibalize our city budget. The Board of Police Commissioners attempts to give the police budget to give the police department a blank check while spreading lies that SLMPD is being defunded is egregious and presents the most serious danger to our city budget and the livelihood of St. Louis. Mr. Payne himself testified in court this month that the police have gotten raise after raise in the last 15 years and an increased departmental budget every year, while other critical city departments like DHS and SEMA are so underfunded that they can't administer effective programs or pay competitive wages for their workers, let alone keep us safe when natural disasters happen. Almost 100 people testified at the ENA hearing with the same demand, and I urge this committee to listen to your constituents. Do everything in your political power to push for a budget that funds for the care of the people of St. Louis, not cages. This committee needs to introduce an amendment urgently to reduce the SLMPD's general fund allocation by $25 million. The future of our city and the people who live here now is on the line. Stand up to the state board. Stand up to the special interests like the police union and the billionaires. Fund resources that address the root causes of harm. Specifically, y'all need to recommend that the Board of E&A reallocate that $25 million in police funds to fill the gaps of at least $1.5 million minimum for Code Blue, because $3.5 million was spent last year, in the first year in a long time that there were no winter deaths. We know what works. $4.1 million for OVP, which is what they need to be able to do their life-saving work and address the root causes of harm and really keep us safe. $1.5 million for the Right to Counsel program, because those Prop B funds are not coming. They haven't come yet, and are we going to go another year relying on these mysterious ghost Prop B funds that are going to fund Right to Counsel? No, we need it to come from the general fund. And every other penny, we need every other penny of that $25 million, send it to meaningful tornado recovery until the north side is whole. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Evan. I'm not sure if this is Paradise or Purdue from the 10th Ward in opposition.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. My name is Dr. Evan Pardue, and I'm a 10th Ward resident. Today marks 1 year since a tornado touched down and wreaked havoc throughout many North St. Louis communities. And still after 1 year, our city officials have yet to lay out a plan and allocate resources to make the north side whole. For a year now, we have been told to be patient, but the more we watch, the more we see that our city's current plan is to functionally abandon our communities yet again, while at the same time procrastinating and apologizing along the way so that they can imagine they're doing all that they can. This is apparent when we examine the proposed budget for fiscal year 2027. The current budget proposal does not include significant funding allocations to help the north side communities to rebuild in the aftermath of the tornado, while also failing to adequately fund agencies, key agencies like the Office of Violence Prevention and the Department of Health and Human Services. While at the same time, they continue to drastically overfund the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department, the most murderous police department in the country. And I just want to reiterate some of the points made by previous speakers. Is the simple fact that SLMPD literally murders more people than any other municipal police department. They also steal millions of dollars in assets from our city residents. And at the same time, they colluded with state officials in order to usurp local control of the police. And what do? We reward this behavior by giving them a 7% increase in their budgets while everybody else is while other city employees are receiving 3% increases. It is the job of our city officials to advocate for what is in the best interest of our city residents and not to cater to fascists at the state level and SLMPD. On the case of North City, residents need common sense community resources in order to thrive. On the issue of public safety, the Office of Violence Prevention Network, which addresses the root causes of crime in our communities, has been proven to be a better approach to public safety than the police-forward approach that the city has taken thus far. Yet the Office of Violence Prevention's annual budget has declined from its peak at $12.5 million and is now only at roughly $9 million. To continue advancing in their work, we request that at the bare minimum, you all fund the Office of Violence Prevention Network at their previous level of $12.5 million. In addition, key services through the Department of Health and Human Services, like the Right to Counsel program, Code Blue, the Tiny Homes program, and other key services for our homeless and elderly populations are severely underfunded. I ask that you all increase the funding level for each of these programs to $2.5 million for Right to Counsel and an additional $1 million each for Code Blue and the Tiny Homes program. And lastly, millions more in funding are needed to facilitate home repair and building stabilization on the north side. Don't just leave it up to the RAMS fund allocations. Actually put some money from the general fund budget towards rebuilding the north side. Because in the current proposal, increases are primarily for debris removal and building demolition. But if there are no programs put in place in order to restore and maintain residents, then you all are just complicit in gentrifying and displacing Northside residents.
Thank you. Next, we have Melanie Marie, from North County, in opposition.
Melanie Marie, Ferguson resident. My name is Melanie Marie. I serve as a People's Response Organizer with Action St. Louis. Quite frankly, we would rather not be here doing this today, but so be it. For the past year, residents have shown up respectfully. We have organized, we have testified, we have reasoned with this city. We have buried residents while fighting to stabilize communities devastated by the May 16 tornado. Today, I want to say their names because this conversation has become far too political and disconnected from the human cost. Dolores Holmes, Renee Lyles, Patricia Ann Pendleton, Larry Patrick, Juan Baltazar, Mr. Atkins, whose leg was amputated during the storm, and Mr. Curry, who died months later from a broken heart while waiting for recovery. These were not talking points, these were lives. And after all this suffering, the city is still presenting a proposal that falls short of what the residents actually need and deserve. You all know the Neighborhood Stabilization Program alone requires roughly $150 million to fully meet the $50,000 cap for applicants seeking to stabilize their homes. So why would you think $110 million for broader recovery and redevelopment is reasonable while people are still fighting to stay housed? Especially while tens of millions are still being directed downtown, layered infrastructure funding reserves, and while the city was prepared to entertain a nearly $300 million police budget from a department that largely refused to come stand before the public, answer questions, or justify why policing always receives urgency while recovery gets delayed. That is what people are paying attention to. This is not about whether infrastructure matters. It's about priorities. The city somehow always finds urgency when systems need protection. But when it comes to protecting Black residents in North City, we are told to compromise, to wait, to be patient, even 365 damn days later, excuse me. And that the most disappointing part of it all, after a year of funerals, displacement, instability, and residents begging this city to move with urgency, you came back with a proposal asking North City to settle for less, while everyone else's priorities remain protected. We deserve more than having to beg for dignity and competence for North City. Do the right thing. Fully fund Right to Counsel. Fully fund the Office of Violence Prevention and amend the RAMS proposal to allocate $150 million directly toward tornado recovery and find any other dollar you can find. Your mama dollar, your daddy dollar, office of any dollar. Find it until North City is whole. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Michael McLemore from the 12th Ward in opposition.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Dr. Michael McLemore from the 12th Ward. So since the proposed good faith budget increase for the police department has only led to all of you all being sued now, and they still refuse to explain their budgetary needs, I believe the committee should consider reducing that amount to better align with what is actually legally required for the city to pay, and reappropriating those excess funds to go towards programs that have actually worked in the city of St. Louis, including the Right to Counsel program, the Office of Violence Prevention, and its partners in community like Show Me Peace, also Code Blue and the Impacted Tenants Funds, or even allocations towards filling gaps in funding for tornado relief. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Helen Bailey from the 11th Ward in opposition.
Initially, Helen Bailey, 11th Ward. Initially, I didn't have anything prepared. But this entire ordeal is exhausting, patronizing, and evil in a way that can only be successful in a place where enslavers have been rebranded as public safety officers. I cannot emphasize enough the financial ruin we're encroaching upon just to give maladjusted racists who spend their days cosplaying as soldiers on Call of Duty monies to continue terrorizing our underfunded and blighted neighborhoods. If this budget passes as it is, it will bankrupt this city. We've already curved our broke besties in North County who, with a larger population and smaller budget than us, want to merge with us so badly. Why can we not curb this egregious cash grab from the SLMPD and other business owners who pimp our city for their personal profit? The tornado exasperated the reality of the multifaceted failures of this city, including that North St. Louis is in a food apartheid, and there's no indication in our immoral budget that the city of St. Louis even knows about it. New York City has less police per capita than we do, with a budget that overshadows ours, yet they found money to fund city-sponsored grocery stores. Starvation of a civilian population is a war crime. When George W. Bush flew to New Orleans with his dog after Hurricane Katrina, we knew buffoonery was afoot, but guess what? We haven't even seen our mayor. There are missing and have you seen posters up all over this city and online for her. 1 year ago, our absentee mayor told residents in North St. Louis to starve and die. Those were not her exact words, but what could it mean to witness a devastating twister and tell people not to help their neighbors when they themselves had no intention of coming to help? That's neglect and attempted murder. It's a dereliction of duty. The residents of the city of St. Louis deserve meaningful representation that makes change for the people. I've never been to Festus, but it's now become my #1 travel destination for 2026. We need you all to be louder and bolder. We need you all to be more creative in how you meet the needs of the constituents of this city. The money to save our city exists. The money to rebuild North St. Louis exists. Stop letting these people play in our faces. Are you guys not also residents of this city? Reject the police budget and fund the programming that has already been proven to work. You have the numbers. People have talked about the impact that these programs have had on our city and our residents. Free the land held captive by the LRA and the nefarious unchecked property owners who have only had their wrists slapped for actualizing the Team 4 plan and devastating our city. Free those enslaved at the CJC. Fund a resident-led development in North St. Louis. Invest in our children and the positive, successful future of our city. Thank you.
Thank you. We have our final speaker for today, Christian Blackman of Ward 6, in opposition.
Good morning, Christian Blackman with Ward 6. I'm going to repeat and lift up a lot of things my comrades and friends have already said before me, but I feel like we need to keep saying the shit until it click. So I'm here to oppose this budget, first because the police don't need any more money. In fact, if it was left up to me, they wouldn't get anything, like not even a penny, to kill and lie like they did in the 2024 murder of 17-year-old Amisha Wilkins. I also think it's completely insane for our city to pay the money to this murderous department who doesn't show up to even talk about their budget and who clearly doesn't feel like they even have to answer to city leadership. Programs like Code Blue, Office of Violence Prevention, and Right to Counsel should be fully funded. At the end of last year, my organization and several others pushed and advocated for $2.5 million to be put into the Right to Counsel program. That push actually had DHS request that $2.5 million for then the mayor only to come around and then completely defund it. Funny, she actually voted for Right to Counsel as an alderwoman, so that's interesting. It took over 100 people to speak to this for the then $100 million to then be allocated towards Right to Counsel, which that's cool, but it's not enough. Just like $110 million isn't enough as a starting point to get the North Side back whole, $1 million isn't enough as a starting point for this crucial program like Right to Counsel that literally keeps people in their homes. There are so many questions and critiques around where our city is, why our city is where it is, and part of that is because we do not fund services and programs for our people, and specifically for our babies, for all of St. Louis, not just parts of it, not even parts like the ward that I live in, which is Ward 6, but particular elects feel that only particular parts of the city is worthy and particular people are worthy, and they align themselves with their personal agendas and with folks that have their own agendas when they're getting paid to, like our mayor who got paid over $100,000 by Bob Clark. we have to wonder and question these things. Sorry, because I don't understand why we have to keep coming up here and saying this shit over and over and over and over and over. Give our people what they need, period. The police don't need any more money. We need programs and services to keep our people safe. And that's it. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments from committee members? I'm going to go in order of seniority, starting with Alderwoman Sanye.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Payne, can we have you come back up and I can ask you some questions to clarify some of the comments that were raised today by public comment?
Sure.
I think obviously one of the dominant messages in the testimony were around SLMPD and the budget. And so could you clarify the amount that we are required statutorily to allocate to the police and what our budget gives to that?
Well, there's currently litigation over that. And as you know, the statute says a certain percentage on a calendar year basis. As we presented, it was 22% in a calendar, was it last year, 23% this year, 24% next year. There's some dispute of that because it was written on a calendar year basis. We have a fiscal year, so what percentage is anybody's guess. It's also as a percent of general revenue, and there's some disagreement over what that constitutes. Given that the litigation's gone, I'm not going to go much further than that, but that's a big discussion about that.
Can you say how much our budget currently gives to SLMPD?
Well, yeah, it's before you.
I just want to restate it because some of the public commentary noted things that are from other taxes within our budget that I think the public might be thinking. And I asked you this question in budget ourselves when you came before us the first time to present, and I think we talked about just some of the various use taxes and other things in here, and that all the numbers, including the taxes that we have to give, that there was an attempt to align it up with what we perceived we were required to do.
I'm sorry, that's not
That might
going to
not
help. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not really following your question.
So you can't just say, like, I guess the real question is, I understand what's in court, but not what's in court, just in terms of what is actually in our budget, not anything being legislated. You would say that this doesn't give anything beyond what the city perceives we're mandated to do?
I would say we're meeting our statutory obligations.
Okay. I'm happy to, like, if it's off record or if anybody who's here wants to, like, maybe even just send me an email or even send the chairman an email. I think we would be happy to clarify if there are like specific questions within the budget about what's going to the police because unfortunately, I think because in litigation there are things that maybe can be said, but I can say that there have been many conversations to just try to make sure that at least on the city's end, there's nothing additionally required. We're not doing anything above. I know it's a specific ask. Please don't give anything beyond what you perceive you have to. The budget is attempting to do that, and I've like asked that question and had those conversations. I think some of them might have to stay offline. But I'll go to the next thing. You can speak to like something that came up around the building division. Right. I know like our building permit processes, someone mentioned $260,000 going to the building division for technology. I have an understanding that that comes from a fee that the city collects and how it is distributed, but if you could speak to that.
There's a percentage of the fee. In total, it's $10 per $1,000 permit. $6 of that is a general revenue fee. $2 of that is the building demo fee. $2 of that is the lead remediation fee. And so when they went to the new system where they are allocating the new system where you can pay online and do all of that as a way of collecting those revenues, the cost of the program was allocated proportionally to the percentage of the fee that is allocated to each of those three sources or three uses.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that again for folks who might be paying attention, that as a part of the permitting and special permits that the building division issues, they get a $10 fee, and essentially they distribute that fee between multiple purposes. Majority of it is $6, which is general revenue, but then the other portions, which I know the lead remediation fund came up, $2 goes towards that from fees, so that there can continue to be funds placed into that. I know someone also mentioned, well, like I see this money that's going to lead remediation is going to the building division for staff and salaries. That actually is lead remediation, because it is going to be staff that go out and do the lead remediation. They have to go visit the sites that have the leads, they have to do assessments, they have to put it back into the city, so that like the staff have to be there to do that. If there are like questions that are more specific, I'm happy to explain it, but that's why you see it broken down that way. And I will say, we are a city that is full of lead, and one of the issues and complaints that is received regularly is that the building division staffing capacity is so unfortunately low that a lot of times it takes a long time for them to get out, to visit the sites, to do the assessments, to put it through our system. And so that's why you see it in there. And then I know someone else also mentioned the technology that is there that is being used, saying, you know, technology is not lead remediation. I would also just share with the public that I think that technology is actually necessary for the building division. If you look at our city's building division as opposed to many other cities, or even like right to counsel or code ordinances, the idea is that at some point you all as residents can log on to a website and see all of the various code violations and citations that the building division has, which is really important when people are going out and wanting to rent places. You don't find out on the back end once you're in the unit that there's mold or there's whatever the other issues in. You'll be able to see these citations and other things online. And so I do think you'll see conversations continued about the building division getting technology. And I'm actually very supportive of those conversations, because I think that we have to have a level of transparency that helps us with understaffing, but also I think it is necessary that people don't find out the issues once they're in a unit. And I think that if the city could put some of our information transparently available, people could find that out on the front end. And even when you come in to get, you know, the property owners have to get a number of permits to get occupancy going, those conversations could be had on the front end. And then I guess my last question, or I don't know, I will just say, like, in conclusion, I do agree with a lot of what you all are uplifting and talking about. I know that they are things that we've talked about before and kind of been advocating for individually. Alderman Aldridge sponsored the right to counsel and really tried to push for that transfer, and that's something that many members on this committee were encouraging for. Many of us reached out to members of ENA when the original budget was proposed, and I know I certainly was like, you know, where's the money for Code Blue? Where's the money for these things? And tried to have some of those conversations on the front end. And just want to remind you all that the trickiness of this situation is that whatever, if we fail to send back, if we fail to send back a budget to ENA where we basically have to ask them to add anything, because I want to remind you that the Board of Aldermen, unfortunately, we only have the authority to cut. We don't have the authority to add. So we make cuts, and then we have to send it back to ENA, and we have to ask them to add the things we're requesting. But the trickiness in that is that whatever we do and whatever they don't do, whatever they propose to us, if we haven't figured out those conversations and gotten their buy-in, then July 1st, the budget that they propose becomes the budget. So I just want to share that information with the public, and thank you for my time, Chairman.
Alderwoman Velasquez.
Thank you, Chairman. First, I just want to thank everybody for being here today. I know that there's a lot else you could be doing on a Saturday morning and not be here. There's obviously, today's the anniversary of the tornado, and so you could be spending your time in other places, and you chose to spend it here. So I just want to thank you and honor your time. I want to kind of echo what my colleagues have said and just make some clarifying comments. Mr. Payne, you're going to be here a little bit afterward. So Director Payne has been with the city 38 years, and 20 of those as budget director, so nobody knows the budget better than him. So I think if you have questions, he'll be around. I think just to clarify, what the police board, what the budget that they suggested is not the budget that you see. As Director Payne mentioned, and as you've probably seen, I think I'm counting up to 5 lawsuits so far between various folks in the police board, including the president of the board, Arch City Defenders, the mayor and Director Payne. They just sued all of us, if you didn't see that this week, so we've all been summoned, the entire Board of Aldermen, the comptroller, the mayor, as well as the budget director, and then there was an additional suit that the budget director and myself and Alderman Browning filed this week. So there is lots of litigation, but I do want to just clarify that the budget that the police board requested is not the budget that you see here. And I think that it's really important for the public to continue to see what you're saying here, especially the State House and the governor, to see that this is not representative of what the people want, and we are taxpayers, and we do deserve answers about what those things are being spent on. So I won't spend much more time than that. I just want to thank you all for being here and making time to be part of this process. Ooh, actually, one other thing. What Alderman Senier said about we are unlike most legislative bodies, including the legislative body at the Missouri House, that we do not have full budget authority. Most other city councils, most other legislative bodies have full authority over their budget. So as Alderman Senier mentioned, we can only subtract from the budget, which means any additions are essentially negotiations. Most legislative bodies have the power to add and subtract. That failed at the ballot. I hope it will come back an addition, but we can change that if we change our charter. But that's different than most other bodies.
Thank you. Thank you, Alderwoman Velasquez and Alderwoman Sanier. I do want to also just echo, I appreciate everybody being here. I know this is a heavy day for our whole city, especially individuals that was impacted by the tornado. And I know a lot of people are organizing in this room around a lot of things and have been boots on the ground when it comes to tornado recovery. When the city was not ready to mobilize, it was folks like Action and For the Culture and so many other organizations. I won't name them all, but that was doing the work literally the day after and continuing to do the work. So I want to thank them. I want to thank everybody that came out today. Again, there will be another public hearing. The goal from the Board of Aldermen, kind of from the Budget Committee, is I think both Alder people have mentioned, we didn't start with the budget. ENA started with the budget that was made up of the comptroller, the mayor, and the president. They have one public hearing, and then they did make some amendments this go around. I think, Paul, if I'm correct, they added some additional money to the Tiny Homes Project, in which I do have a question about that, Director. If you can come up, they did add some funding to the Tiny Homes Project. I think they added some funding to Right to Counsel, which is not the full funding that would really help individuals, and I think they added maybe some funding for summer jobs. But for the Tiny Homes Project, I think, I forget who is in front of us this week that is over the Tiny Homes Project. They said they have funding for $1 million.
Correct.
But they are looking to potentially go out to a grant, I think, to get maybe $700,000, but that $1 million, it was DHS that was in front of us, Human Services. They said that $1 million would only allow them to operate until July or maybe June.
That doesn't sound correct.
Okay.
But I would have to check with them. I'm not privy to the conversations you've had.
Okay. Ms. Russell had said that the $1 million only gets them kind of a little bit more than throughout. It doesn't get them the full year. To be able to do the work, and that fear is that we got the Tiny Homes Project in my ward. If they don't have that funding and all that shut down, people being displaced would be problematic. But we can follow up on that. Outside of the Tiny Home Project, can you talk about the other amendments that was made in ENA before that budget came to the Board of Aldermen?
Yes, there were a couple of others. As you mentioned, the $1 million was added to the Right to Counsel program.
How much?
$1 million. And then also another $1 million was, I believe it was $1 million, added to summer jobs program managed by Slate. And then and there were some adjustments to the Forester Division's budget to add some staff positions to weed and debris program.
And we've been hearing from the, I think, not only at the ENA meeting where over almost 100 people showed up, but during these public hearings. Could you talk a little bit about the OVP office? It seemed like it was funded in the past at 12 million, now it's funded at 9 million. How did those funds start in the past, and where are they being funded now?
Yes, and actually, this is more than just OVP. It's a lot of programs. There are a lot of programs that were funded through and originated in ARPA. Now, one of the problems, and ARPA did a lot. I mean, basically, it was $500 million, a lot of funding on a lot of things, everything from capital funding to special programs. But the limitations on ARPA, as budget director, I try to make that message practically every year, is that they're one-time funds. So when you are planning one-time funds, you have to make sure that either A, you've got a sustainable source of funding after that, or B, you don't want to actually continue to have a program that creates an obligation going forward once the funding source is expired. So, for instance, you don't want to be hiring a bunch of people using a grant fund that has a 2-year life and then it expires, and then how are you going to fund it going forward? And so that was some of the challenges that were presented when with ARPA funding. Again, ARPA did a lot of great good for the city. I think there were a lot of programs that were funded there, a lot of capital improvements that were funded there, but ARPA, as you know, is winding down at the end of this calendar year, and all the funds must be spent by then.
Okay. Thank you for that. I just want to get some clarity and then also back up again, like I think both of these individuals said. It's not like the Budget Committee won't fight. For the last at least year since I've been budget chair and been on the committee the last 2 years, we definitely have made some changes to the budget and have had some success with this current administration and previous administration to get some changes in to the budget. So I'm sure we'll be looking at things that we would, outside of hearing from departments, but also hearing from the public. You know, we at least hold ourselves on trying to make sure that we have multiple meetings to hear from the community. We will have another one at the International Institute this Wednesday at 6 p.m. And then we will have a follow-up, our last public hearing on May 26th at the Board of Aldermen. And this Monday, which is already public on the agenda, and you good to go, Mr. Payne. I'm good. I'm good. No more questions for you. I just had to say. This Monday, outside of hearing from various departments, such as CDA, juvenile, the circuit court, SLDC, supplies, and excise, and we'll hear from Slate. All these meetings are all public online for people to watch them or come to the board. Tuesday, we will hear from, we'll have a board bill that will do a pay study, and then we'll hear from the assessor's office, affordable housing, city attorney, the registrar, and then we'll have that public testimony hearing. We won't have a budget hearing during that daytime, a public testimony hearing that May 20th at 6 p.m. at the International Institute. That following week on May 27th will be our last public hearing at City Hall at 9:30. And then if there's any amendments made from the Budget Committee, we will make amendments that day. I will also say that same day, later that evening, will be a RAMS hearing where we hear from the Office of Recovery. But this Monday, one of the items that will be on our agenda for the committee to vote on, because it is public, is we understand that I think every member up here also are very pissed off that the police department has not come in front of this committee to present their budget, to be transparent. And when I reached out to Sonia Gray and asked them to come, I know there's a lawsuit between the city and the police. There's several lawsuits. One of the asks was at least you could present the budget that you believe is that the commissioners are asking for, and to be able to justify why they're asking for those amounts, and they did not come. So this committee Monday will be taking a vote to, one of the authorities that we have in the charter is to subpoena the police department to come in front of the budget committee to present their budget. And hopefully that date will be May 27th. So we also, outside of being elected, we also live in this city and are dealing with lawsuits. If it's Alderwoman Velasquez and Alderman Browning, also suing the police department around freedom of speech, because if you say something or pass legislation, they say we could be removed from office. We also understand the urgency right now, how we have a state-controlled board and a board of police commissioners who have never been elected, who do not know the budgetary process, like Paul Payne, who's been doing this for over 20-some years, making decisions that will have consequences not only on behalf of the residents, but you also talk about other departments, refuge, streets. Public safety is more than policing. Public safety is building division. Public safety is the health department. So we will be taking that action, having them to come in front of this budget committee, because it is important that not only we hear from them, but more importantly, that the public hear from them. So thank you all for being here. Please join us Wednesday as we take this on the road, but also please, for the people that's been doing the work and continuing to do the work, just take some time also today. I know there's no breaks in here, but self-care is important. So thank everybody who is doing the work. And Madam Clerk, do we have any written testimony?
We have none.
One announcement, and then I'll pass it over to the Alderwoman of the 7th Ward. I think there is an event happening at Fountain Park from 1 to 4 that Oasis is doing, one of those boots on the ground that have been doing work among many folks in this room. They are having an event today, so if you can make it over there to support. Again, that's from 1 to 4. I do believe Alderwoman Keys and All Hands on Deck is having an event in Fairground Park today from 10 to 6. So there are free food, free groceries and other items.
Bring your bag. It's all hands on deck. Just bring your bag.
And parking ticket forgiveness, I'm just gonna put that out.
And ticket amnesty, yes. So if you got you some parking tickets, go and get your $100 off, so you ain't got to worry about that. Any other announcements from any other members? Alderwoman Sanye.
I have an announcement, and I wish that we were discussing better things, but I do want to just make sure that folks know that on Monday at 5:30 p.m. there's going to be a special meeting held by the Planning Commission to discuss data center regulations. I really think it's important that you go. A lot of you all made reference to Festus and saying, well, we voted out our council members. Right now, if you watch the way the data center approval went, you could vote out every one of us and they would still be approved just the same, because we actually don't have a role in voting for data centers. I've been very transparent in saying that I was extremely disappointed in the process of the approval for the data centers. I think it lacked, I think it had absolutely no transparency, and I would give it an F. And again, just to give you all some hindsight into how the process is working, I was at 9:51 a.m. I got an email from the mayor's office telling me that there was going to be a hearing at 1:45 p.m. for the data center approval. We had a Board of Aldermen meeting scheduled for 11 a.m. And so I did what I could within that hour to start making phone calls to some folks who may or may not be in this room and others, did post on social media to let folks know that it could be, but the entity that actually is in charge, that approved the project, the Board of Public Service, all of those folks are actually majority appointed by the mayor, and there's no overlap with this body and that one. And so we didn't get a chance to weigh in. We actually got notice at 9:51 a.m. is the time on that email. So I really want to encourage you to be present. It will be in the Kennedy room, because I'm trying to make it where the process for usual engagement that's familiar with the public is consistent. So it'll be at 5:30. You should absolutely come and you should share your thoughts on data centers. And also, data centers are one thing, and whether or not the city is going to have them, because obviously that was approved, although there was an appeal filed, so we'll see what happens with that. But really, I think that I would encourage people to look at the process for which these things are approved, and the fact that even as your direct elected official, I don't get a say-so. Maybe I will get notice in it. And so I think, I would just encourage you all to come to committee to see some of the recommendations that the Planning Commission is making that I've had a chance in, but also to, it'll be potentially taking a vote on those recommendations at those times. So if there's any major thing you want to see, any major feedback you want to see to the process, I would have it in, and I would flag that right now my biggest concern is the approval processes for which the data centers take place. I do not prefer a process that basically gives the executive branch the hand to just say, delay it, pause it, go when it go. And as legislators who are directly accountable to you, we don't even necessarily have a role in that conversation. But again, 5:30 on Monday in the Kennedy Room will be that hearing by the Planning Commission to discuss the recommendations we've been working on and to take in our final round of feedback before a potential vote.
I would like to excuse the alderman from the 9th, Alderman Browning, and alderman from the 5th, Alderman Devoti. Congratulations to his daughter's graduation. With that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So move. Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Moved by the 7th, second by the 6th. Seeing no noes, motion carries.
Yeah, but the approval process.
Later, Ladybug.
Well,